Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. In the comics, TV, and movies, we will go from the Mojoverse to Earth 616 to New Asgard in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the man without fear, Chris.
I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
Alliance Assemble. Volume 117. We have another review, and it's going to be an interesting one. How are you doing today, Brent?
You know, I can't complain. I've seen a new Marvel movie this week twice. I had a new Marvel television installment. I mean, sometimes it's hard to keep up with all the new content, but it's a problem I love to have.
You know, it's definitely a lot of fun. This was an interesting movie, and apparently it's, I guess, a little divisive, I could say, with some people.
I knew within about, 30 seconds that some cultists were going to hate it, and it made me smile so much.
And the question is, what kind of cultists?
You already know. I don't have to answer that question.
Oh, you could always fall for my trap at that point.
I could.
Well, you know, let us get into the lovely show plugs for our network. So we are part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance network with 8 shows. We've got on Mondays alternating bi-weekly Slice of Film with Ranger Alliance, DC Alliance on Tuesdays, Superhero Discussions on Wednesdays, Star Wars Alliance on Thursdays, this show on Fridays, a walk through the multiverse on bi-weekly on Saturday. However, Joe has been going weekly with The Boys, and The Boys has officially wrapped up. So this Sunday, look for that last new weekly episode on the feeds. And then my show goes monthly on the last Sunday of the month. So check out World's Finest True Believers. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we got 2 tiers. Our $1 tier is our tip jar to say, hey, you think we're doing a good job. And then we've got our $5 tier with ad-free episodes, early access episodes, and Patreon exclusive shows, such as We Can Watch This All Day, our Marvel Alliance rewatch. Again, if you haven't listened to it already, we've got episode 6, Thor, very timely release for us. And then we've got, I think it finally dropped with Batman 89, so Clay and Travis will hopefully be reviewing that for you patrons very soon. Joe's Multiverse Minutes, Travis's Top 5s. What do we got next? We got Katie's Legends Canon with the books and the comics with Star Wars. So we got a lot of good things. Patrons, we want to thank you. We can't do this without your support. But if you can't join us on Patreon, we totally understand. But if you can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever podcatcher of choice may be. So, reading some of our private chat right now. And we really appreciate you rating our solo Marvel Alliance feed or GWave feed. And last but certainly not least, we want to thank our official sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com, for all your Omnibus Collected Edition hardcover needs. JP and the crew at OPB have got it going on with all the hardcovers and collected editions you need. From the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl Omnibus, the Amazing Spider-Man Beyond Omnibus, Aliens Volume 4 Omnibus, all these lovely epic collections omnis. Use that code MarvelGUA at checkout for $2 off every single order. Use it as much as you want. Immaculate packaging, excellent customer service, ships around the world. We want to thank Organic Price Books for being our official sponsor. All right, so all the plugs are out of the way. But first, before we bring in our panelists for this review, I do want to thank David for subbing in on me so I can enjoy one more day of vacation.
Yes,
I really appreciate it. You did an excellent job. So definitely doors open for you to return whenever you want.
Wonderful. Perfect. Yes, it was a lot of fun to do that with him. For those who don't know, I know him in real life, so it was a lot of fun to do that.
No, we just pick up some randoms at that point, but he also is a patron too. So
He is, which, I mean, we didn't even talk about when I said, hey, do you want to help out this week? I need a film person.
So, all right. Well, again, thank you so much for that. Hope you enjoyed the penultimate episode of reviewing Miss Marvel. But, all right, let us bring in our panelists. So, our first one is coming in hot from Walk Through the Multiverse. He's finished watching The Boys. He's a co-host of Ranger Alliance. Mr. Joe, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, my God.
That's a pretty good impression.
Oh my God! I'm just gonna kick him back out.
Okay. That's fair. I'm doing good, guys. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
Good.
I was trying to think of something good, and that was the first thing that came to my mind.
Well,
That's the first thing in a lot of our minds.
I mean, Hey, we don't always get it on the first try. What can I say?
Yeah, not always, but hey, we try. But all right, and last but certainly not least, with all the hot takes from when it comes to DC, Power Rangers, and Star Wars, he's coming in hot. That'd be Clay.
What's up, guys? This is going to be a fun review. I will say, maybe not what everybody expects, but probably exactly what everybody expects coming from me in this movie and the director and everything else. But I am looking forward to hearing everybody's thoughts for sure.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be interesting at that point. So let us get into the movie Thor: Love and Thunder, directed by Taika Waititi, bringing back a lot of main players from the Thor franchise at this point. But let us start with non-spoiler thoughts. So, Joe, why don't you tell me what you thought? Tell us what you thought about this.
So I had fun with this, but that's about as far as it goes. Like I enjoyed the movie. It's very Taika Waititi, which I love. Taika, I love his work. Maybe a little too much Taika Waititi, but that being said, I still loved it. It was still good. Get into I don't want to say too much because really all of my gripes and what I really want to talk about is spoiler stuff. So I enjoyed it. I did get a chance to see it again before the review, but I will go see it again in theaters at some point in time.
Clay, what about you?
There was a lot of Taika-isms in this movie, as Joe was kind of hinting at. And, one of my biggest qualms with Ragnarok was all of Taika's isms. So it was very, very interesting. But I will say one thing that I didn't do going into Ragnarok because I had no experience of who Taika was as a filmmaker. I didn't really enjoy Ragnarok because of Taika. This time, I walked into this movie knowing exactly what kind of film maker Taika was, and I was able to enjoy the movie a little more. But there is some issues that I have with this movie for sure. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but yeah, it's going to be a very interesting conversation. I was not expecting that completely from Joe, to be completely honest.
I've been keeping my thoughts quiet for a reason.
But we shall see, because I'm pretty sure Chris and Brent, of course, are going to probably be more on the positive side compared to me and Joe. But I'm interested to hear any qualms.
Well, Brent, I'll start with you on that one. Is Clay's prediction going to come true?
Yeah, probably. I do have some qualms about the movie, but in general, Love and Thunder is to Ragnarok what Guardians 2 is to Guardians 1. It is more of the same in the sense of things that you loved or hated in the first installment, they took to the next level in the second installment. It's exactly what Taika Waititi said he was going to make. He did exactly what they said. They marketed it bang on. You knew exactly what this was going to be from the marketing. And so it's the movie that I expected in the sense of the tone and things like that. Does that mean every single joke landed for me? No, absolutely not every single joke landed for me. And we could talk about some of them that didn't. I'll give you a hint. Joe came in with one. Like that joke, it worked. The first time was fine. The fifth time was too much. Yep. But in general, lots of jokes did, and this movie did some really serious stuff as well, and it did it well and strong, and it was well acted. And Chris Hemsworth, especially, the way that man can bounce between comedic and serious tones is incredible, and I don't think he gets enough credit for it.
Yeah, with, Brent and everyone has a little bit of what I want to say with, we've said it many times and it was true. Like, if you did not like Ragnarok, you're not going to like this movie. I've seen maybe one or two people that I've seen that I'm mutuals with that actually said, I didn't really like Ragnarok, but I really like this movie. But that's kind of a rare case. I have not seen necessarily a lot with that. this, again, Taika and what he's doing, he doubled down on what he did in Ragnarok and pushed the envelope a little bit more, continued doing with that. But what I did enjoy about this is the idea that Thor has gone through a lot over the last number of movies. He's freaking lost almost everyone he's been close to, with this movie not with being no exception to that. And the amount of journey that he's had with this series is just very interesting, and especially with what he's confronting now. And so what I did like, I loved seeing, the Mighty Thor with Jane Foster being on screen. I enjoyed, the finding out kind of what happened behind the scenes with them. Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher, I really liked what he was brought to the screen. I liked what he did with it. I'm kind of in between on whether I needed more out of it or was it just enough. I think, like you said, the jokes sometimes were kind of like a 50-50 kind of thing. Either they beat the joke to death or it was a little cringeworthy or really landed. But I think, Brent, you're right. The idea of some of the quiet moments, the serious tones that at the points that they had it was probably a lot of times where this movie shined. Does this movie get a sense to me of a lot of fun? Yes, I think the movie is fun. If you go in, and I think it's one of these things that we try to put a lot of these movies, because it has been saying, oh, it has to be kind of not necessarily serious, but it has to be this epic of Shakespearean thing like the first Thor had been at that point. And now that we've gone in a different direction with Thor, people are like, well, wait a minute, why can't it also be fun? Why can't it also be like that? And so, again, if you're looking for kind of everything on the line with this, I think you got a lot of different things, of hints of things being very much on the line. But I also think this was a movie that we didn't have. I think we had a catechism, with certain, going after the gods at that point, but it wasn't like the world's going to end necessarily if all the gods disappeared, I think it would have been catastrophic in some ways, but I didn't think it was necessarily one of those, the world is going to end. The world would move on, But again, I enjoyed it, and I think I have kind of a 50-50 in the sense of qualms versus things I really liked. But all in all, it is another movie that I think I can watch all day. So... But, all right, any other non-spoiler thoughts? I want to give it a shout out. Amara Daniels in the chat saying, I miss the days when being a god meant something. You know what I mean. I had a nice pithy response back of who these gods really are.
As far as non-spoiler, I will just bounce off of what you said about Christian Bale. Holy crap. I was one.
He did awesome.
He did.
I am terrified of clowns and Pennywise and It. I think I should be more terrified of Christian Bale with some of the scenes in this movie that we will get into more specifically in the spoiler section. But he acted his ass off in such a comedic type of film that Thor has become. And, that's just the way Hemsworth and Taika have made this franchise, this part of the franchise, which, I mean, each to each their own. But just having Christian Bale kind of on the opposite side of the coin was very interesting. So just wanted to put that out there. It's very, very cool to see.
And Chris Evans saying Bale better is greater than Pennyworth, and Amara Daniels saying, I think everyone's terrified of Christian Bale after his Terminator rant.
I'll say this about his take on Gore. This is another MCU villain where I'm kind of siding with them, and we'll get into it with the spoilers. Yeah. But it's just I don't see where he was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, the methods being wrong in the sense of how certain things kind of went. Certain actions that he was taking in the sense of that. But yeah, let's
save that for over the wall.
Yes. So, all right, well, let us get into. So, if you have not seen Thor: Love and Thunder at that point, press pause, go see the movie, then jump back. But if you don't really care about getting spoiled at that point, stick around. So we're going to take our first ad break. So listeners, if you as you know, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on. They can be a bit loud, so I'll give you the 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. So, all right. Starting off in this, as for those people that have not been to our breakdowns, we break this down into 3 acts. So we'll start in the beginning. We may not talk about everything in the act, but we'll kind of stick to the acts at that point. This movie, I thought, started off not in a way I was expecting. I kind of thought we were going to bring in gore like early on, but not like we were going to be basically starting it off with it. And I think it was a really good choice for them to do that, to kind of establish what our kind of main villain is going to be, the reason what's going on. And I had while on vacation, I decided to bring and read the first volume of Jason Aaron's Thor Omni, where Gore was introduced, to do some homework. And I texted Brent after I had finished it and saying, if they have done a good job in the sense of Gore being terrifying just on the page when I read it, if Kristen Riel even brings half of that to this role, this is definitely going to be a villain or / antagonist that we could necessarily be in a top tier one. And I think you're right, Joe, that Christian Bale bringing in his gravitas, his being, I know Travis Snell says many times that he is the best actor of his generation, and I'll definitely put him on a top tier list as well. But just, you say what you want about some of the not having the tentacles, things like that. It's his cadence. It's how he says certain things. Is when he took over the Necrosword, how his movements were, that made this a villain and an antagonist to something that to really be scared of in this movie. And so I will say, starting off the opening, though I was, this is different. The more I thought about it, I was like, no, that was the right choice before bringing on the Marvel fanfare.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I just say I love the twist on the Marvel fanfare in this one? With the more guitar riff and stuff like that.
Yes,
it's still
I
similar.
loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same theme, but really cool. But yeah, you're absolutely right that Christian Bale turned in just a phenomenal performance. He did so good. Gore was creepy. Gore was scary. And yes, at times Gore was sympathetic. Like, you understood his pain. You understand why he's so upset. He's just trying to save his kid. He's trying to save his daughter. He's begging for water as they're walking through this desert. And he finally, not, at least as far as we can tell, not long after the death of his daughter, he discovers his particular god, and he does nothing but laugh at him. You totally understand where he's coming from.
Especially where the subtle commentary that Taika likes working into his movies, in the sense of like the gods being, especially when he says, the god says, Gore says I die, there's no more worship. There'll be others at that point. He's just a number. He's a politician saying, there'll be something like that. I thought that was very, very, remember, no politics in our comics and movies now. But that's very much a very good allegory to modern day.
But even that, though, the gods themselves were always like that in all their mythology. They didn't give a crap about their servants. Hell, Zeus himself screwed most of his servants just for the heck of it. So by Gore's god just basically laughing at him and telling him, I don't care if you die. You can go ahead and die, and that'd be fine. You're ruining my paradise right here. Go away. Like, it's this is why I say I understand his motivation of, he gets slighted and he lost everything, and this person that he worshipped is just like, yeah, I don't care about you. Whatever. Yeah, of course he's gonna take his revenge. And then he realizes that this isn't just his god, it's all gods. Now, you had said earlier on that some of his methods were not the best, and I will agree with that, but this in the beginning, this setup for Gore, perfect. Like, I liked it. And this has actually gotten me wanting to go to the source material and read up on the character.
I really enjoyed this opening just because it was so different um, from what we would normally have. The tone of this very, very serious, and not really, because I listened to the guys over at Geekverse earlier this morning, and I think it was Kirkland that said that his audience was very put off and or confused by that start of the movie and not really knowing, hey, where's Thor, hey, where's all the funny stuff, where's the Guardians. It sets the tone for what kind of character Gore is, and he keeps that tone or even goes darker throughout the entire movie, which I really enjoyed. For somebody who uses the Necro Sword and uses the shadows and is by all means a boogeyman in this movie, you needed to have that tone. And I think you also needed the tone because of how light everything else was, how funny everything else was. I think Taika was able to play a lot with his seriousness and his silliness that he is usually what's the word I'm looking for? I wouldn't say an expert on, but people always talk about how serious some of the stuff in Jojo Rabbit can be. Even though
Phenomenal
that
movie, by the way. Absolutely phenomenal.
it's
Still need to
on my
watch that.
list, but I haven't seen it yet. But I also know that Jojo Rabbit is also kind of comedic, because when I watched the trailers for that, I was like, I really need to see that. It looks kind of funny. Uh, but yeah, I really enjoyed this opening. Any chance we see some symbiotes come out of this?
I did like they did a lot of good stuff pulling from Jason Aaron's run in the sense of images at that point, especially with the supposed former wielder of the Necro Sword being positioned the way they were at that, but didn't give it a name, didn't give it anything like that. Again, if you read Aaron's run, it goes into a lot more, and but I really did like the just how he very much the sword almost came up to Gore and sensed, like, take this and basically slay the person who's going to basically kill you or be killed and die for nothing at that point. I also found it interesting that Gore's at the time now dead daughter was Chris Hemsworth's daughter, which was interesting.
Which I didn't find that out till after the movie.
Yeah. But I think it gives a very good, just like you said, establishing what's going on, what's Gore in his vow that all gods will die. And that is his mission. That is what he's going to do. They've taken everything away from him. Now, I think the one thing that's hard to do, and this is a Cliff Notes version, kind of I'm a bit firm believer that everything adaptation is fine. It doesn't need to be exactly source material. To your point, Joe, go to the source material because you gain a lot more understanding about Gore and kind of the species and everything like that, where he gets from. You get a lot more than just this. But I was okay for what they tried to do. I think they did it very well for the time they had committed.
Oh yeah, I wasn't saying that that he did a terrible job with the character because of the origin. No. I because of his portrayal, I want to go back and read the character itself.
Anything else before the intro, before we head into kind of our the Guardians, because I know that's going to be a big part of this intro at that point.
No.
So
let's go to the Guardians.
So the Guardians, one thing I'll say, and I'll turn it over to someone to jump in. Now, remember, this movie was not supposed to be coming out in this order. Guardians was supposed to be first, and in the first, Thor was going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So when James Gunn was, at the time, fired at that point and then came back on and they pushed Guardians way down the line, this forced Taika to put in the Guardians in the movie, because all we left of seeing Thor at the end of Endgame was he was going off with the Guardians. So this was something that originally was not going to be in this kind of treatment, but he had to bring it in. So it was interesting to kind of at least see a truncated idea of what maybe James Gunn was going to do with Thor in Volume 3. So
it definitely felt odd having the Guardians there. Don't get me wrong, I liked it. I liked them being there, but the tone of the movie, take them out of it, and the movie's fine. Them being in there, I think, felt odd because they weren't there. They were there for what, 15 minutes, if that. So and I also understand you have to get to this point because the last time we saw him, he was leaving with the Guardians at the end of Endgame. So we need this scene, but it also, I think when we left the theater, my girlfriend would ask me if they had actually filmed that at the same time because there were some scenes where it seemed like they had just copy pasted them in, and I didn't see that, but I definitely felt different with that scene and the Guardians there.
Brent, you were going to jump in.
To me, the Guardians made total sense for why they were there this way. And of course, we know things have changed between the COVID delays and the COVID reshuffling and then the whole thing with Guardians 3 and James Gunn. But as it is, when we last saw Thor, he was leaving with the Guardians. So yeah, like Joe just mentioned, that of course makes total sense there. People loved that scene at the end of Endgame of Thor with the Guardians. People loved the multiple scenes of Thor with the Guardians, or Thor specifically with Rocket and Groot in Infinity War. That is a team up that it just worked. The chemistry that they had was just, I mean, you could just feel it. So I love that they were included. Would I enjoy a full Thor Guardians team up? Sure, absolutely, I would enjoy that. Sign me up for that. I'll watch it tomorrow with a smile on my face the whole time probably. But I thought it was important because he did learn a lesson from them, specifically from Star-Lord, from Peter, about it's better to have loved and lost than never have loved at all. That's basically the lesson that he learned, just in a more comedic Guardian style fashion that came back in a Thor funny fashion towards the end when he tried to apply that with his relationship with Jane to basically say, like, they made it pretty clear. Thor was worried about getting too close to people because he was going to lose them because of how old he is and how long he lives. And so they made it clear that, like, at this point, he wants to go into that. And it's part of his, he doesn't care about that. It's part of his time with the Guardians that taught him that. He immediately tells Star-Lord, he's like, you have something special here with your found family. And I think it's wonderful that they did it. I thought the scene was hilarious. Just the overall scene, the way that Thor goes into battle, he wins the entire thing on his own, and then the way he's just like throwing them a bone about, like, we use teamwork. This was definitely a victory for us all.
I will say I enjoyed the inclusion of the Guardians, but I kind of have to agree with Joe in the sense that, like, overall, I think with all of Peter's lines and the one or two lines from I think it was Nebula.
Groot.
I don't think Groot may have had one. I think each character of the Guardians had at least one thing to say, but it really was just like, hey, we need to show you how Thor goes from here to here, and almost may not have been needed, in my opinion.
I mean,
just because
I will agree with Brent saying the whole Peter scene and them talking. Yeah, that makes sense. So I do take back my maybe take out the whole 15 minutes, but yeah, sorry, I'll just let you continue that.
Well, no, I totally get that. He needed that line in order to be like, well, Jane, I just really need to feel shitty right now. Well, what does that mean? Oh, well, in that whole comedic scene, I understand that. But it was very unfortunate in the sense of, I think there could have been more that the Guardians could have done compared to the very little that we had in the movie.
Well, David brings up a good point. We did get another marriage out of the scene with Kraglin in it.
Yeah, how many people has he married? Because it sure sounded like he's marrying all over the universe.
Apparently, he's a serial marriage. He falls in love, wants to at least have at least someone on every planet so that he could have at least a place to lay his restful head on. I'm with you, Brent, in the sense of what I loved a whole movie with with Thor and the Guardians gallivanting, at least for a movie or show or something like that. Yeah, sure. I think why I think it's important is because it shows where, you know, we leave where Thor leaves at Endgame. We think, so, okay, go gallivanting into their lovely Thor adventure with the Guardians, things like that. But we see exactly like and as we said, Star-Lord Peter Quill calls him out on it, saying, you're lost. And we see it, and you're just going through the motions, especially when he's on the planet and says, all right, teamwork effort. Well, he just takes so care. Like, it's not a challenge for him. He just goes and does at that point. Now, is he the headstrong, you know, totally just flying off the handle, not caring about certain things? Not as bad as Thor 1. We see what ends up happening to the temple that he's not too careful about at that point. But he's trying to find his place in there. Now, someone say, oh, we could do that in different ways. Yes, but it kind of, I think it helps establish where his head is at this point. And I think the trailers did a little bit of disservice in the sense of like Thor wanting to become a peaceful person. I think the trailers were making us think like he was trying to kind of give up being the battler, when that really wasn't at all what was going on. So I think they gave some misdirection on that. But I did like in the sense of he does still want to do good. And when he sees the distress signals from what Gore has been doing, and then sees Lady Sif call out for Thor, where are you? At that point, he finds that purpose again. He's trying to find, instead of going through the motions, he's oh, my people need me. Lady Sif needs me. I need to go. But I do. The joke that ran over, and I agree with my opinion, but the introduction of Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder at that point, the screaming, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. By the end of it, it got annoying, but the random times it did show up, I did chuckle enough in the sense of.
There was one time when they're screaming, and I can't remember who said something. It was a Korg or maybe even Thor, and they both just stop and look at him. It's like,
oh yeah, they're eating them. They were gonna turn him into meat or something like that.
Yeah.
I think like, the time
that one.
I think the last time I laughed was when they ended up crashing into the shadow world and they heard the scream, and I was like, okay, that's good.
See,
I got
that's
Rick and
where
Morty vibes with that.
When they crashed into like the shadow realm or whatever. I felt that was the one that it didn't need to happen, because
I'll give you that.
It was at a moment where, and I know we're jumping way ahead, but we're just talking about them. It was immediately after a really serious moment, and this is a Taika-ism as well as an MCU-ism. There's a serious moment. Well, we need to cut it up with something funny, and that one just, I feel like, was a little inappropriate.
I'll say this about them. The first time they start screaming, I thought it was funny. Like the third time, I was like, okay, this is getting annoying. And as it kept going, the sound really bothered me. Viewing number 1. Viewing number 2, I found them far less annoying. Just because it's the kind of thing of like, I know what I'm in for with them. I get it. I get the joke. I found them far less annoying. And it's probably, by the time I'm able to watch this movie at home, I probably won't care at all about them. Do I think they overdid it? Yes, I do. But again, there's several jokes throughout there that I'm like, that's a weird one. I don't know if I would have gone with it. I still haven't decided if I liked or think it's dumb or both the joke where he flew on Stormbreaker like it was a broom, like he was the Wicked Witch or something.
I wasn't really for that one.
I was more like, oh, he thinks he can fly, and I thought he was going to fall down, and the way they looked, and then he's in the back of, oh, he really can fly with it. Okay, that...
I mean, the look on on Mantis and Star-Lord's face was pretty funny, but
yeah. So, but all in all, I think it was, as I said, the scene probably, if the movies were released in the order, the scene would not happen. We'd already know what Thor and the Guardians did, but it is one of the things. Now, I think the whole thing, if you see the trailers, you know kind of what Star-Lord is trying to get Thor to understand at that point. It's kind of already ruined by the surprise of like the leaning in and things like that. But I'll tell you what, the Guardians being as crazy and kooky as they are, they end up being the more mature ones of just saying, we need to get the hell out of here and leave him behind.
I thought it was great just how Thor is like, I give you your ship. I'm giving you the ship. Take care of my crew while you're gone. I love the way Thor just like assumes they're all his. And The rest are just like, what are you talking about? Get out of here.
Yeah, and so we already know what we're getting with next year's Volume 3 at that point, so it'd be interesting if we're going to get any Thor references. I say we probably at least get maybe one reference to Thor not being there at that point.
Yeah, there could be like a time when they feel like they're losing in battle. Oh, I wish we had Thor with us or something like that.
Yeah. But now we head to our reintroduction of Jane Foster, and yeah, they definitely hit us right there in it that Jane's dealing with cancer, and they do not mince words about that.
Stage 4 out of 4 stages.
Yeah, it was nice to see Darcy. That was a nice surprise.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I remember a rumor or something about her, like she
think
was cagey in an interview or something.
Yeah.
That's it.
But
Yeah.
and then seeing Selvig, even
nice
though it was
too.
just like a Zoom call, I'm glad that they incorporated those elements.
Yeah.
It is a very important part of Jane Foster's character. Like, as soon as they brought her back and things, she's going to be the Mighty Thor. Says you cannot do that role without bringing the cancer, and I applaud them for keeping that out of the trailers, keeping that out of the press tour until the movie has come out. That she's going to be and the only reason I know they didn't do as good of a job is because if you paid attention to the toy leak in the sense of her hammer, they directly revealed that in the description of that. But if that's the only slip up they had, good job for keeping out of the general audience, because I did hear some audible gasps in my theater when Jane comes on screen and then they start putting two together. It's like, oh, wait a minute, she's going through chemo.
I do like how she thought that she could fight cancer through science.
She's a scientist. It makes sense.
She is. And of course, the kind of godlike mentality that she has when talking to Darcy, when Darcy's like, oh, do you think that humanity is not gonna prevail without you figuring this stuff out? And she is so headstrong in the idea of figuring out the secrets of science and just the secrets of the universe out there. I love that she was able to write her book, and then she was talking to that guy right next to her. Oh yeah, I wrote that, and just completely destroys his book by ripping a page out and explaining. I can't even remember what she was explaining.
Wormholes.
Yeah.
But you know what?
wormholes.
If I ever meet an author of a book that I'm reading at that moment, they have permission to do whatever they want to that book.
Yeah, I can go buy a new book. It's not, it's no big deal.
That's true. It's just like, again, she's doing everything possible, but it's the idea of reading about Mjolnir and the ability of possibly Mjolnir restoring life, healing, this, that, and the other, that prompts her.
It was Mjolnir whispering to her.
Yes.
That
Well,
got
I
her to look.
my name on the StreamYard is in direct reference to how this is coming to be, and we'll get to it when we get to
I
it.
thought you were writing a sequel to The Secret.
Well, I need to know this. I don't know if this is jumping around because I can't remember if this is revealed in Act 1 or if it's revealed in Act 2. Kind of the time that we see Thor and Jane have together, through what I would only assume is the time between Dark World and Ultron.
Yeah. Because they're still, they're still together in Ultron.
No,
Yeah.
they were separated.
Are they separated?
They-
Okay.
Because
If I
I
remember
believe
correctly.
there's like a throwaway line.
It's
That
a throwaway
they are-
line, but they're
Yeah.
separated. He's right.
Yeah. So I can't remember if it was in Act 1 or Act 2, or if I can ask this or not.
Yeah, I put that in, their reunion. We do find out what happened to them. So yeah, that's Act 1 in my opinion.
Okay. So in the comics, because Chris, I messaged you earlier this week saying that I'm going to start the Mighty Thor run. I do not have Marvel Unlimited currently, but I don't own Thor God of Thunder. So where this was taken from a lot of different parts of Jason Aaron's run.
Yes.
And I'm not entirely sure if it is answered via Mighty Thor, uh, but how she becomes quote unquote worthy, or when she is able to pick up the hammer for the first time in the comics.
In the comics, it's very similar in the sense of she even says like Mjolnir calls to her.
Okay. But the only reason why Mjolnir called to her was because of something Thor said in a flashback scene.
True, and
I believe.
Yeah, in the movie, in this case, yes, and I
Okay.
did like when we get that revelation of the times of how they grew apart, why they grew apart, but Thor saying even that's how in love he was, saying like telling Mjolnir, he basically putting his own mystical spell on the hammer, saying always protect Jane.
Yeah, but even that didn't necessarily say she can pick you up, like
That's
just
true.
protect her. And so, and Thor calls it out later. You are worthy, like you're worthy to have picked up the hammer. And so, I think that's pretty cool that like she is worthy. And you know what? For all we know, she was worthy the whole time. We just don't know because she never, to my knowledge, she never tried to pick up the hammer in the Dark World or the first Thor movie.
Correct.
But
No.
regardless, Thor definitely did put some type of enchantment on that. I mean, they flat out show us that,
Yeah.
which I think is cool that he was able to do that. And the connection that he had with that hammer allowed him to be able to do that. My only real complaint there is I would have loved to have seen the first time she picked it up. Like
Yes.
for it to
Yes,
reform.
I really wish. I was hoping we were going to see. I mean, we
Yeah.
see them when she goes to New Asgard. We see how New Asgard's becoming this big tourist trap, this, that, and the other. But when she walks up to it, you see it. You see the lightning start coming. You see it starting to reform. I would have loved to seen not just the reformation, but her transforming for the first time, and what that would have the reaction of everyone. Because by the time we get to when Thor comes back after talking with Siff about Gore, and he arrives, you know, Gore's there attacking New Asgard. That's where we see her for the first. I get why they did it, but it still would have been cool just to see that first transformation. But I get from a filmmaker's perspective of leaving that moment for when Thor sees her for the first time.
Yeah, but then I want to yell at the marketers because they put that in the trailers, and so I'm like the
Deleted
first time.
scene?
So I'm like,
that's
come
probably
on,
what
let
I
me,
think. Could've been
and
deleted scene.
you know, it's not the movie's fault for what the marketing put into it. Like we still have to grade the movie as it is. I get why they let like effectively we had Thor's viewpoint in that, but man, it would have been cool, but is what it is.
But and I wasn't really necessarily complaining at the fact that the promise is what gave her, you know, her powers or whatever. It's something that I actually really enjoyed. Because I was questioning, okay, how is she able to pick up the hammer other than her, of course, her being worthy? And when they flat out told you, oh, it's because of the relationship Mjolnir had with Thor, because I feel like the relationship between Mjolnir and Thor was also a story that was being told in this movie.
And I will say in the comics, there is one single issue that talks about the birth of Mjolnir that is really fascinating. Absolutely fascinating, of the birth of Mjolnir and how that was created.
Mentioning the relationship with, you know, Jonathan as it's called, or Mjolnir, and Stormbreaker and Thor. Can I just say, like, that's another one of those jokes that I thought was funny at first and kind of went a little too long. Like it was this weird love triangle thing between, like, for me, like
Yeah.
when Thor tried to pull the hammer and Stormbreaker came around from behind him, I'm like, I kind of wish that had been the last one because I thought that was really
Yes.
funny. But
Yeah.
I just kind of wish that had been like the last joke on that level.
And I think
Stormbreaker.
Go
I
ahead.
was just say Stormbreaker being jealous the entire movie kind of got old real quick because
Yeah.
it even happened
Yeah.
with the lightning bolt later on.
it's one of those things that were, I say, like,
Thunderbolt, sorry.
Taika doubling down on everything. Like when in Ragnarok, okay, we did a joke 2 times. We're now going to do the same thing 4 times, but spread it out throughout the movie. At that point, that's kind of where I agree with you all. Like, did we need we'll go back to the yelling of the goats at that point. Did we need to see it 6 or 7 times? No, we could have seen it half of it or even less than that and still get the same kind of point across. It's his thing, okay, but that's where it also kind of takes away when you just beat a joke into the ground when you don't need to do it as much anymore. But again, that's a preference. That's his thing.
And one of my gripes about it is, like, I almost felt the jealousy that Stormbreaker was having is what caused the uh, uh, Bifrost to not work correctly. And I didn't really like that, but I understood they needed a reason for them to use the goats and Stormbreaker and the ship to give this aesthetic of them going on a voyage. Like, I understand they needed that aesthetic, and so they needed a plot point to make it all work together.
Thinking about it, since we know that Gore was actively going after Stormbreaker, the Necrosword tells him at the beginning, get the Bifrost, go to eternity. And at the end, he's just like, call the axe, call the axe. Maybe what they should have done to compromise Stormbreaker instead was like that first interaction that they had, like some of his shadows infected or something like that. I don't know. Maybe, it would have been less funny, but maybe that's also why I'm not a writer.
I do have a question about the key, which we'll get to later on. So just remind me of that later.
Okay.
But yeah, so let's get to the new Asgard Attack at that point. I mean, this is where I think like we really see we've alluded to Gore's killing all these gods and things like that, but this is kind of the first kind of seeing how powerful he really is. Just him like showing up at New Asgard on the outskirts of town, sending in the shadow demons or the shadow monsters, whatever we want to call them at that point, which is an actual creature from the comics, but how he is trying to not just take out the gods, but like his plan is, okay, he's going to, what we later found out is using the kids as bait, as a trap to get what he wants. But just how we see the whole town coming together in the sense of taking all these demons down. And that's where we get Thor and Jane meeting for the first time. And I like that they don't kind of jump around it at that point, but I do like what Valkyrie says when he sees this new Thor and she's like, oh yeah, you're going to get a kick out of him. All right.
What you're right. Thor's going to get a kick out of the new Thor. Something about this movie that I absolutely, absolutely love is that not once does Thor try to keep Jane from like going into the action, from being a part of it, from helping out, until he finds out that her being Thor is actively killing her.
Yep.
That's the only time he ever once says, you shouldn't do this, I'm trying to keep you safe. Like, they could have easily gone with that, that trope. And they did. Like, he accepts her immediately. He's jealous of the hammer because he wants his hammer back. But he accepts her and the role that she has. I love that they did that.
I will say it was a little odd that everybody else kept on making the comment, oh, like, is it a little weird that your ex-hammer and your ex-girlfriend are together? Like, almost to make a confrontation between the two of them.
I mean, that came from Korg, who said that. And you gotta
Valkyrie
remember,
said
like,
too,
she may have made a line about it, but when Korg said, like, it's your ex-hammer and your ex-girlfriend, your ex-weapon and your ex-girl, think back to Ragnarok when he first meets Thor, and Thor tells him, oh, I lost this, I lost that, I lost my hammer. And at the end of that conversation, Korg says, it sounds like you had a real special and intimate relationship with your hammer. So, like, from Korg, to me, that made total sense.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, getting to King Valkyrie at that point, I think Tessa Thompson, I think that's one of my problems with the movie is that we get more of King Valkyrie being kind of the snarky, being the kind of sarcastic and different things. She does her role, but that's one thing I think is missed in this movie is I think her part. I wish we had more of King Valkyrie in this.
I agree. So much so, I believe when Love and Thunder was announced, one of the big points of that announcement at San Diego Comic-Con was, oh, a king needs her queen.
It was.
Thinking that
Yes.
this was going to be a big plot point of this movie, and we didn't get that at all.
No, and we did. I mean, again, like we still like,
One
okay, we get the
conversation, and that was it.
Yeah, the one conversation about like her loved one being killed with all the other Valkyries. Okay, that we got that the first time. Okay, it wasn't like said, but we understood. Now it's said. It's like that's it. I thought we were going to get a little bit more about it. So that what was given to her was okay, but I think I would have taken a little less of Korg and wanted a little bit more Valkyrie.
Well, and I also kind of lied when somebody was asking for feedback on Twitter about what I thought about this movie because I didn't want to give too many thoughts. The same way you guys are saying that you guys wanted more of Valkyrie. I think I wanted a little bit more of Mighty Thor and Jane. I don't think she was really put out there. I know that she was a main plot point, but I feel like there could have been more of her in this movie. Because another good point that the Geekverse guys said on their review was you get the story of her cancer and then the ending, which we'll get to, happens. And it's all in one movie. And I feel like they maybe could have pushed that a little bit more just for like the dramatic sense and how it's really affecting her. But I feel like it could have, like, there should have been more.
I think that's fair. I certainly would not have complained about more. And I'll be honest, I did not leave that movie thinking, oh, I needed more of the Mighty Thor. We got a good amount of her, at least for me. Valkyrie, I'm with you. Can we just get a solo project? You know, even it doesn't have to be a big budget movie. It doesn't have to be a full 6 to 9 episode story or on Disney Plus. Even just like one 90-minute story on Disney Plus or something. You know, just can we get a little solo project there? And the other character that I would have liked a little bit more of was Lady Sif, especially because
oh my gosh,
like,
what a bait and switch that was! Goodness gracious!
I hated that introduction to her in this movie.
It felt weird. It was a weird. Frankly, it was not a very good joke. David and I were talking today, and we're like,
that's one of the jokes I didn't like.
He comments to me about how she thinks she's going to go to Valhalla, and Thor says, "Well, you can't because you didn't die in the battle." Well, Odin didn't die in battle either, but they all believe that he went to Valhalla. And I said, well, in the movie, it's Odin. That's why. In reality, it's just a bad joke.
It just seemed like everything we've seen, what we have seen of Lady Sif, like, it was just, wait a minute, she's kind of weird in this one. The uniform is just like, her armor is like, okay, and
it was more comic-like. I've definitely seen that look, especially the helmet piece.
It was in the sense, but it was just like they made such a big deal of the actress coming back. Lady Sif's going to be in this movie. Okay, we got her kind of explaining to Thor what's going on, and she loses an arm, and then we don't see her until the end. I wasn't expecting her to be a big part, but I actually thought about, oh, okay, she's going to be on the road trip. She's going to be on the ship and taking part in this when... Okay, it didn't happen.
Less than 5 minutes of screen time.
Less than 5 minutes. I would have put it like 2, maybe 3 if we're being generous.
You know, considering she's the last of the original from the original movie, Warriors 3 and Lady Sif.
I don't think Taika likes the Warriors 3 at all.
Well, apparently not.
Okay, I also got to give credit to David for this. It's really useful being able to talk to him about this stuff the next day at work when we should be more productive. He pointed out that Taika has called himself a bit of a troll before, and you could say that this was a shot at all the people who were bitching about the way the Warriors 3 were used in Ragnarok, because they were even like they truly were cast aside in this one. That guy and this guy and whatever his name is. But in story, it all came from Korg. I don't blame Korg for not knowing the name of people he never met. I'd give that one a pass. I thought it was hilarious.
And that's the thing where we get to Korg in the sense of like, it's Taika's character. And this is Taika being who Taika is at that point. Love him or hate him at that point. This is his kind of, I want to be in this movie. I want to have a little bit more of a part. I'm the director of this. I'm going to put myself in there. Hate it or like it at that point. That's the way it is. But this is him, like you said, being a little bit of a troll, being something like, and people are jumping all on these statements he's making these days. Says, you're not getting it. You're falling into his trap. He's getting a good kick out of this.
No. Maybe I fell into this trap, but I didn't. All I said was in my head. There was, I think, a quote on some article saying that, oh, I'm going to make the one movie that Thor fans don't want to see, and that is a love story. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, have you not seen Thor 1 and 2? That's all it was. Like, with Jane.
You could argue 1. 2, not so much.
What are you talking about? Like, she had the Aether in her blood, and like they were meeting his parents, and it was.
I will argue Thor 2 was a love story.
I've met my ex-girlfriend's parents so many times.
Yeah,
they
Thor
love each
2.
Other.
I don't like the quote in the sense of like, but it's just it's one of those things that he's saying certain things just to rile up the base just because he can.
Thor 1 was not a love story about Thor and Jane. She was a love interest, but that story was it was almost a coming of age story of finding him like to become worthy it was effectively his origin story is what it was. It was not a love story. Thor 2, okay, I'll give you. But one thing we haven't had was a romantic comedy. And you can make an argument that's what this was.
Yeah, and that's I think that would be the more accurate depiction at more of what we may be trying to say. Again, I don't have Tyke on speed dial to ask him what he really mean by that or finding the context to it. But one thing before we leave Act 1 at that point is during this fight we see Gore actually in action going against Thor and the Mighty Thor, and it's interesting how they portray him fighting in the sense of the sword itself it is taking his life, which is basically kind of what in the comics, the Necrosword is a symbiote from Null, the god of the symbiotes. And what works in the sense of that, the symbiote, if it doesn't find a good match at that point, like a true, like Venom is at that point with Eddie Brock, it will basically suck the life out of you and kill you at that point, which is basically what the sword is doing. But he's not as graceful with it. It's very unwieldy to him, but he's more like a brute in the sense of how he's wielding it and using the magic that of jumping out of like suddenly disappearing or popping in and out of different places. And when he does use it, it's more of brute force.
I mean, I feel like he doesn't know how to use a sword. It shows, and that it works though, because like you said, Chris, he is popping into a shadow and popping up behind you and stabbing you. You don't have to have skills with a sword to stab somebody in the back. So,
yeah.
What I enjoy is, well, it obviously gives him power, and he can go toe-to-toe with Thor. He's not so powerful that he automatically defeats Thor. You know, their first encounter basically ends with Thor choking him out. And Thor gives as good as he gets the whole time. And it's fun to watch those two, Thor and Gore, basically with their, their swords, their weapons and stuff going. Like, I enjoyed seeing that. It felt like they were almost equals at that level.
I did have a little bit of a problem with how hard, like, it was to, like, even fight Thor, considering Gore has been killing all of these gods one by one, like, so fast.
I would argue they weren't prepared.
That would be my question. Do we know how he was doing it?
And what he was doing, and who these gods were.
I wouldn't necessarily say Thor was prepared.
He knows who Gore is.
He's a warrior.
And he's aware.
We don't necessarily know. Like, that very first god that he killed, I'm not convinced that guy was a warrior. We don't know. I mean, sure, some of them probably were. I mean, he took down Siff, right? And she was a warrior. Yeah. But we don't know the context behind those. So I'm not willing to say he should have handled Thor better because he easily beat all these other gods. Because for all we know, he literally, as Joe said, stabbed him in the back.
Yeah.
One thing I almost forgot, and we knew this was coming based on the castings at that point, we get another play.
Yes.
And this was another thing I was not spoiled on. When Hela came on, I was not prepared, but I loved it. Melissa McCarthy playing Hela.
Yeah.
So, when I saw this cameo with Melissa McCarthy, was there ever a rumor that she was going to be joining the MCU?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought so, because it immediately was like, oh, we should have known this. But I wasn't 100% sure.
Apparently it was leaked, but I heard the rumor that she was joining the MCU, but I didn't know in what capacity, nor did I see the leak that she was she was going to play Hela, because apparently that did leak.
Interesting.
So, but I thought it was great, especially when she just came on being who Melissa McCarthy is, all bombastic. It was like, my whole audience started cracking up laughing just because of who she is, and she did the part right. But I loved it how, technically in Act 2 when they come back up and they go to King Valkyrie, Matt Damon, and Hemsworth brother say, should we do a play about this? I think the people really need a play.
Perfect.
I would
good.
love that to keep coming back up. I'm sorry. It's
And
now
that's-
become
see,
part of it.
That's a joke that works. It
Yeah.
works in Ragnarok because it was Loki pretending to be Odin, telling these guys to do this because, it's Loki. And then it worked here because it's in a tourist village. Of course, you're going to have like plays like this just around and everybody able to watch. That is one of the jokes that worked. And,
Because it's only done once.
correct.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I enjoyed it more the second time than the first, but just that scene when they're like suit up or whatever they say, transform or whatever the word is.
That
and
was
just
the fun.
Watching
It's
the way
morphin'
they did it,
time.
the whole and then when he throws the hammer and you just see the string carrying the hammer along.
Yeah. That is good. Oh no, it breaks apart and scene. So a great way to end. But anything else you want to discuss before we take our next ad break and go into Act 2? All right. So as you know, listeners, again, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose when ads come on. They can be a bit loud. Give you that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. All right, Act 2. We got a lot to cover in this one. Different ideas. Anyone want to jump in? Don't feel like you have to do any sort of. What do you want to talk about?
I love Axel.
He was cool.
Himdall's child. I can't remember his
It
actual
was like
name.
Asher. It
It's
was
Axel.
Asher.
They were pretty clear. You're thinking of Astrid, but he was pretty clear. His name is Axel.
Yes, yes.
Heimdall's son, Axel
Well-
Heimdall's son.
Well, no, it's just the fact that like Thor was like, "No, your father gave you a strong Asgardian name, and it's going to be Axel." And like that argument was hilarious.
But I laughed at it. But I have sat into meetings with parents that I know their child by their nickname, and I have been very quickly corrected, saying, "Excuse me, what is that name?" I said, "No, you will address my child as this. That is the name I gave." Oh, yes, sir. Here we are.
It's an identity thing.
It
and
is.
I am glad that Thor ultimately
Yep.
respected Axel's identity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
And
I
Axel was awesome.
I will also say not only Axel, but I think the inclusion of the kids and the story of don't meet your heroes.
As they're
Absolutely
meeting their hero.
hilarious. Well, it's just it is a huge payoff at the very end for what happens there.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed the relationship, and the one thing that I absolutely love about Thor in comics that I have read is, yes, he's a god, yes, he's sometimes arrogant, yes, he slips up like this Thor does several times, but the one thing that I love in the comics is what they got right here is that he does have a lot of heart. And so when he started to see these kids actually like fear for their lives and not necessarily know what's going to be coming up next, he's like, "Oh, but everything's going to be okay. You guys got this. Like, remember, you guys are team kids in the cage,
Yes.
Get ready, guys. You're in this really scary thing, and I don't know if Gord's going to come up and lob your heads off, but yeah, you can do this.
Any moment now. Yep.
What again, they come up with this lovely plan, and at first they really don't have a plan, and I think we all can really bulk of this is discussing is what we all thought was Mount Olympus. It's really Omnipotent City.
That was a weird play. I don't
Yeah.
know entirely why they chose that as the place that all the gods are. And I guess
Well,
it's
because
more
there was
so
more
because
than just Greek gods.
yeah, it was more than just Greek gods, and that was
Exactly.
what I was gonna say. So as somebody
Breaking Celestials.
somebody
Couple of
who has just started Game of Thrones, was Cord's god sitting on the
He
Game
was
of Thrones?
sitting on a throne of rocks and scissors because rock breaks scissors.
That is subtle and wow.
That's hilarious. I
That's
didn't even
great.
catch that.
That is awesome.
Advantage of the second viewing.
Yeah.
That's where I got it.
Wow. Okay.
That is a great thing. Yeah.
Korg did a rock, paper, scissors joke in the first one, and they got one in here too.
That's
Love it.
awesome.
It was subtle, but it was there.
Oh.
It's a very interesting, the opulence, the we don't care, we're above everything kind of attitude at that point. No one can touch us. And Russell Crowe being Zeus, I thought he did actually a pretty good job with what the character for Zeus, for what this character of Zeus is supposed to be. It doesn't have to be the Zeus I want to see, but it's the Zeus of this universe, and he did a good job with what he was expected to do. I was not expecting
The
much.
accent was weird. It was
accent
weird.
not so much, but yes, I agree with you, Chris.
I feel like the accent was going in and out and changing and doing some random stuff.
It had to
But-
be hard to
Kind of
hold.
like his singing. Ooh.
The orgy jokes were pretty funny though. Those made me laugh.
I feel
How
like,
many orgy jokes did we actually need, though, is my question.
Well,
Yeah,
again,
Double
it's
down,
one of-
right?
It's the Taika isms that's like, hey, we need to beat these down. You know, beating a dead horse, and that's usually what Taika does. I will say, I enjoyed the scene overall because it was very comedic. You know, it made sense for the movie, but other than Thunderbolt, this is an entire scene that I feel like could have completely been erased from the movie. And I don't know how they would have gotten Thunderbolt, but I feel like this didn't really need to be in the movie.
Well,
Just
you
as
could
a
argue no, because we get the scene of Korg dying.
and I didn't like that because he
He
didn't
took
die.
his body, instead of his face off, we took his body off.
Nice.
I-
I think this scene was important for a couple things. One, it gives us another good action scene, especially with Mighty Thor. We're going to see some more cool stuff with her hammer. It introduces us to new characters like Zeus, whom, yeah, sure, at the time you thought, well, he's dead. That Russell Crowe cameo, that wasn't worth it. But by the end of everything, we know, oh, there was setup here for the future.
Yeah.
We know there's setup here for the future. I like that they referenced Hercules in it. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought it was hilarious the way Thor looked up to Zeus. And he's
Yes.
like, yeah, I modeled
Meet
so
your
much of
heroes.
what I do after that guy, And
Yeah.
the lines about, thunder and lightning, it's kind of reminded me a little bit of the first Cars movie with
Lightning McQueen.
But it was
Ciao.
funny. It was and honestly, sometimes it's just there because it's funny. And that scene was funny, the flick when Thor lost his clothes and the reactions that
Flick
everybody
too
had.
hard.
Valkyrie and Jane are just like, okay, we know, let's give me the grapes. We're gonna enjoy the show. And the disappointment and all the girls' faces when he put the clothes back, like the toga back on him, like you could just see them all kind of get grumpy. It was it was a funny scene, and not to mention when Thor caught the Thunderbolt and turned it back on him. That was pretty badass.
Yeah, that was good, especially at the time when he generally thought Korg was dead at that point.
Yes.
I mean, I can't blame him for being that rash because it is someone that he has grown to, that has been with him for a while and has gone through a lot with him. What I do want to say though is throughout this time, we get our kind of callbacks to what's going on with Jane. Like right before the trip, like she reverts back to Jane herself and then kind of goes back, gets up the hammer and smashes she knows her time is short. She's not a illusion of that. But what people consider to be, I saw a lot of comments on that conversation walking up saying, I'm trying to think of my cool tagline. I'm thinking of this, that, and the other. People would say, well, it kind of seemed cringeworthy. It kind of seemed awkward. I said, yeah, that's the point. She's never been in this kind of capacity, nor did she ever expect or want to be this. But now that she does it, she's trying to make the most of the time she has, not trying to be the flashy one, but trying to blend in and be the things that she thinks she's seeing and has seen from Thor and from the other Avengers.
Yeah.
I completely agree with all of that. She's having fun. She thinks she's about to die. She's having fun, And sometimes people forget that that's what these movies are for. These movies are for entertainment. They're fun. They're supposed to be fun in general, and I think this accomplished that.
One thing that's just me being nitpicky because that's just who I am. The whole
That's
scene.
my job.
Well,
Yeah, I was about to say that is Clay's job.
you guys haven't listened to a lot of rundown reviews, then, have you?
No, I have. I'm just still saying it's still Clay's job.
definitely-
In,
Clay's
in the
job.
GUA, it's my job.
That's fair. So while this scene's going on in Olympus City, what the hell, Omnipotent City, sorry. We do see a couple scenes with Thor in the toga. It's like close up. What stood out to me was the toga was on the wrong side, and I know that's literally just a camera flip.
Oh, God.
But I'm sorry, I noticed it right away, and I'm like, oh, that's bugging me. And then they did
What? Okay, now what
shots.
bugged you more, the CGI helmets or that toga? Be honest.
Okay, so that
Wait.
CGI helmet was
Is there a side for a toga?
no. When it got put on, it was over his left shoulder, and there was a
Okay.
couple scenes, it was over his right.
Okay, I understand. All right, I'm with you.
So, like I said, they just had a camera flip, is all they did. But when Jay put that the helmet on as they're walking, and I focused in on that, and I'm like, okay, they gotta fix that. That doesn't look the greatest because they're moving and it's trying to move with her, and I'm like, I mean, it looks fine. It's passable.
Honestly, they didn't need the helmet in that scene. Like
Correct.
Yeah,
the
they
joke,
didn't.
like the helmet initially when they first met as their respective Thors, and Thor puts on one and then made it bigger was funny. They should have left it at that. Like
The
they
helmets
didn't
in battle
need it anymore.
Makes sense when she goes to battle to just I don't know gives her
But I
confidence.
think
but
in
yeah,
that scene, to kind of go with what Chris was saying, and Brent, she's never been a superhero before. She's in that mode of like, okay, I got the helmet and I'm reenacting what I should say and what I should do. Like she is having that kind of like fanboy moment of being a
A
hero.
Miss Marvel, as it were.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But I will
Which
agree
other-
with.
well, no, continue. And then I want to say something.
Well, I was just going to say I will agree with most. The CGI helmets did not look great. The only time I feel like that helmet looked good was when it was far away, or in the third act when it is destroyed.
True. We brought up Miss Marvel. Is this technically the first appearance of Miss Marvel because she was in the fanfare? She was in the Marvel logo in costume.
Yes,
I
it would
would.
be.
Does the fanfare count?
It's on screen.
It's canon.
It would be her first appearance, I guess, as Miss Marvel.
In costume. That's right.
Other than that's not part of the story.
Yeah.
So,
No, yeah.
First
but
cameo appearance of Miss Marvel.
Okay,
I
we'll
missed
cameo.
that though. I wish I had seen that. I missed that.
He saw it.
That'll be your homework for.
Yeah,
I was too
number
busy
3.
watching Moon Knight in it because I do think it's cool that they're putting those Disney Plus
Exactly.
characters in the movie fanfare.
That's what
Yeah.
my eye drew immediately. Almost always goes to like the A or the R for me. Don't know why. I tried to look at everything else, but A and R are the ones I always focus on every time, and it's always something different.
Yeah.
lately. So I know.
So when we leave Omnipotent City with the screaming goats and everything like that, and they're heading towards, they move towards the Shadow Realm.
Play the trump card.
The conversation that Jane and Thor have when Jane admits and then tries to backtrack from saying she has cancer, Thor takes it very seriously. Like Thor doesn't try to, oh, you're just gonna beat this. Like that's where he says, I can't lose. Basically, I can't lose you. You can't. I was very happy to see that this is probably the whole traveling to the Shadow Realm battle at that point. That's probably one of my most favorite parts of this movie because I thought it was a good balance of a little bit of joke, but all with some jokes. But I think this was a part that they did a good balance between seriousness and joking. But that conversation, I was very happy they didn't wait. That was the perfect time to start having that conversation, and it's Thor to realize what's really going on with Jane.
She tries to backtrack. I didn't say that. What am I saying? Oh, and then he just looks at her. Jane, I'm so sorry. Like as serious as can be. And yes, that was impeccable.
I really enjoyed the conversation because it was one of the very few real moments between them. Of course, it does show that Taika can do both, can be serious, can be funny. That again is where they kind of tease Valkyrie's future as well when Korg is asking, "Oh, do you think they could ever, hold lava rocks together and make babies or whatever?" And Valkyrie hints that I don't think that's going to be possible because she knows about Jane. But I enjoyed this. And this is why I felt that I wanted more of a character that I told everybody the main reason why I wanted to see this movie, even though I hated Ragnarok, is I want to see the mighty Thor. I want to see how they portray her character and everything else.
Let me ask you this: like, if you had to pick one or two things you wanted to see that you didn't see, I'm very curious about that. Like, what would you like to have added with Jane in this? The way the movie's set up, what do you think was missing that we didn't get from Jane in this movie?
I think if you don't have the ending the way it ends is what I really wanted. I wanted it to eventually happen because I know how her character progresses in the comics, and I think that's what they're teasing for the future. But yeah. I think with that moment, her knowing that she doesn't have a lot of time, and I understand that if you're going to play off that she doesn't have a lot of time, you can't give her 4 movies and then boom, then it happens, it needs to be shorter than that. But I felt like in one movie was maybe a little too short.
Okay, fair. So what'd you all think of when they finally arrive at the Shadow Realm and that kind of whole sequence with Jane finding out the truth of what is Gore going after in the battle and the kind of battle of wits a little bit, but the true battle at that point? What'd you all think of that?
Honestly, Justice is Gray edition is what I thought of at first. I'm like, this is
wow, the man who will avoid saying anything about that will think Justice is Gray. Wow,
this is black and white. Well, really, it was just this is black and white, just because it can be. It doesn't need to be, but it does. It does work for it. It actually does work for it. In general, I don't like black and white. This does work for it because it was a story point. There's no light, there's no color. We got to bring them the rainbow, as Jane tried to say.
Which was kind of nice. Whenever there was a little light, when Jane had Mjolnir and it was glowing, you saw color.
The thunder, the Gore's eyes were yellow. Yeah, the color that was actually there. But you asked what I first thought.
I do like how the moment that we all thought Zack Snyder was the blueprint was not in fact Zack Snyder was the blueprint.
Madam Web is the blueprint on this show. Thank you.
No, I'm just saying there was two.
That is the only correct answer.
It was two different scenes spliced together, but I really enjoyed this because again, it has the moments where Christian Bale just gets to perform
Christian Bale. When he was he talking to Valkyrie when he got like all creepy?
I mean, he was talking to all creepy.
he was talking to all 3 of them, but there was like one point in particular.
She says something like you're nothing like him, or he's nothing like you, and he then like gets right in her face and makes her repeat it.
Yeah, it's the picture we've been seeing going around the internet, the one with him like. But
I think so.
Beautiful vision.
Welcome.
Wish I could have taken that screenshot. May have to do that.
Well, you have to go upload it later. No, like
S-Bubs will do it. S-Bubs.
Thanks, S-Bubs. Bale was awesome in this one. My only question, and I brought this up earlier about the key. Did Gore create those pictures, or was that those things he found? And if it's something he found, how was Stormbreaker on it?
To me, it was prophecy. And with Stormbreaker, you got to keep in mind, Stormbreaker, there was a mold for Stormbreaker that they were using.
Oh, that's right.
So, now, the handle is probably different, but to me, it looked like prophecy. And so Gore didn't do it, especially going back to the beginning, because the Necrosword is telling him, use the Bifrost, go to eternity.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I think I just assumed it should have been Heimdall's sword and not Stormbreaker. But I forgot about the mold. So, okay. I take back my question about the key.
You don't have to take the question back.
No, I take it back.
The question is valid. The question is
because having the map there, having the Bifrost be the thing he needs to open up the gate. That makes total sense. What I questioned was Stormbreaker there, because Stormbreaker is like a year old at this point. But prophecy makes sense. A year at max. It's not a year.
Honestly, it'd be like, well, we don't know how much time between this and Endgame, but Infinity War to Endgame is 5 years. So if you want to be pedantic, it is at least 5 years.
Look, it is like 10:30 here. I'm tired.
I hear you.
But no, yeah, you're right. So having just Stormbreaker being there was what I questioned. The Bifrost opening up the gate, no, makes total sense.
It's the same trap that happened with Hela. You know, he got him to call down the Bifrost, and at a moment's notice, he takes advantage of it. Same what Hela did in order to get to Asgard.
Well,
you would think you'd learn by now.
Yeah.
I question that a little bit, just because if Stormbreaker is the conduit of the Bifrost, like them not having it as they are being sucked up by the Bifrost, I feel like that would have been disastrous.
No, the Bifrost was open though. Already, right?
It was, but like, I don't necessarily understand the science or magic behind
comic logic.
Yeah,
well,
I'm sure
the
that's
comic
what
logic was simply that Stormbreaker can channel the Bifrost. It can channel the Bifrost, but it's not able to control the Bifrost.
But you don't have to be holding it in order to go through it, I guess.
No, you just have to be like within that realm, within that. But we've seen that with other times with the Bifrost. They're never like, look back in the first couple Thor movies. Anytime that, or even early Ragnarok, anytime the Bifrost is used, nobody's holding anything. They're just
because they have
area.
the giant conduit of what was in Asgard,
and that happens. Like when I want to actually talk about it later, but when the kids use it to go back, there's the giant conduit.
Yeah.
When Thor uses it to evacuate the team because, both Jane and Valkyrie are dying, there's the giant conduit.
Yeah. True. Okay.
But it's Gore gets exactly what he wants. He uses the kids to trap them. He gets them at a moment's notice where Thor thinks he's got one over on everyone when taking Valkyrie down is the one thing that gets them distracted, and Gore takes advantage of it, and he gets Stormbreaker, and they're left with being transported and stuck on New Asgard at the time. So, but anything else about Act 2 before we take our next ad break and head into the final act? Nope. Oh, Clay?
Nope.
All right. So, as you know, listeners, as always, ads are getting ready to support the network. Give you that 3 count so you can turn that volume down before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. All right, Act 3. It all comes down to this. So, I'll toss it to Brent. Where do you want to start with this?
I mean, with Act 3, it's basically got to be, Thor going back after Gore on his own, right? And this is where I got to ask a logistical question here. At this point, Thor has done the one thing that I appreciated. The only time he has said "please don't be mighty Thor" is when it's killing her. He's taking the Thunderbolt. He's going after. Which, by the way, that scene where he takes off with the Thunderbolt was really cool. Even though it was going around Twitter, people were trying to use it to make fun of him. I'm like, that looked really awesome in the actual movie. But why didn't
that one still?
Yeah, why didn't he take the hammer with him? Like, I don't. I'm like, just take the hammer with you. Like, you need weapons. Like the hammer, the Thunderbolt. Let's do this.
I question that as well, but I did think that he probably thought the Thunderbolt was a sufficient enough.
And maybe he wanted to keep it around Jane to protect her. Maybe. But I at the time, I'm like, he doesn't want her to become Thor again. She's obviously going to because she still has the hammer. Like, no big surprise there, right? Like, take it with you. Like, you've already seen what this guy has done. Go in with overwhelming odds. Give yourself every chance you can.
My thought was, because every time he's tried to even do anything with the hammer, Stormbreaker was kind of
jealous,
but Stormbreaker's not there. Maybe I have to agree with Clay. Having the Thunderbolt, probably it's an extremely powerful weapon. Like,
You're probably right, because Thor is, even after everything he's been through, he is incredibly arrogant. He has lots of hubris. Like that's just a part of who he is. Character development is not a straight line, or at least it shouldn't be if you want people to believe it. I've just at the time I'm just like, you moron, there's the hammer's right there. And you're still worthy. They made a point of showing us he could still pick that hammer up. This isn't like the Mighty Thor comic books where he was not worthy. He picked it up and he even joked about it, picks it up and hands her, just checking. I'm like, come on, like, take it with you.
Yeah. Do it.
I was trying to make sense of this as well, because then I started to think, okay, well, if the Thunderbolt could just take you anywhere that you wanted to, then like, but it was also super strong. Maybe they needed the Thunderbolt to protect them, but I always forgot, okay, well, the Thunderbolt is the only thing from what we have been told that can destroy the Necrosword, so he needs that. And I was trying to kind of, I guess, be a devil's advocate to all of my thinking on how to make sense of everything. But either way, I think it makes sense. The idea of Valkyrie just saying, "Oh, I think I'm missing a kidney. I don't think I can go with you," like that. I feel like it was very odd that she, like, because again, she had that conversation of like, "Oh, I'm gonna fight, to the death, and I'm gonna go to Valhalla. That's the dream." Like, if she is wanting that, then she would have gone and fought in battle and died and gone to Valhalla.
She wants her life to end that way. She doesn't necessarily want her life to end today. And at the
True,
same
I
time, she's I mean, there's a big difference there. And at the same time, she was a liability. She was injured. If she goes in there, she's just someone Thor has to protect. She's a liability. And
Yeah.
she is smart enough to understand that.
Yeah.
It's one of those that Thor is going to be this headstrong person that's wanted to take care of everything. But to what you brought up earlier, I can't remember who brought it up, was that Thor has not prevented any of the females in there, Valkyrie and Mighty Thor, from ever getting involved. Like, he didn't say, "Oh, I'll take care of this." This is the time that he says, "No, you're injured. You're dying by doing what you're doing. I need to do this because right now I'm what's left."
Yeah.
It's where he's forced to do that, but it works for the situation. And I can't remember which one of you pointed that out.
It was Brent that said it, but
Okay.
it also goes into the conversation that they were having on the boat or ship or whatever, when he finally says, "Jane, I love you. And if we're ever going to have a future, you need to live. And because of that, I'm going by myself." And I actually enjoyed that. Did I know that she was going to say the hell with it and probably go fight anyway? Yeah, I went ahead and said, yeah, he's probably going to need help, and she's going to go in at the last second, and she does. But it was needed, and I thought it was a very cool visual also. When she finally does, she kind of had this feeling of like, I don't know if it was like a weird, like, she felt his pain or whatever, if they were connected in that kind of way, because when he was getting hit, it looked like she was moving around in that hospital bed.
Yeah.
But then she looked to her left and Mjolnir was right there, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was a good moment. So when he does arrive back where, Gore is trying to open a portal to eternity, I did like, and we saw this in the trailers briefly, but the kind of this temple or whatever it is, you see Uatu the Watcher, you see actually the Living Tribunal, which is like the third or fourth time. So I'm guaranteeing at some point we're seeing the Living Tribunal at that point, who is basically Eternity's boss. At that point, we see Eternity's sister in the background of one of those statues, Infinity. We also see, I think, Eros, the weird three-headed godlike creature.
So why does Eternity look like Psycho Pirate?
I'm not sure. because that's not what he's more comic accurate when we actually see actual eternity versus the relief of eternity at that point.
Yeah, I thought Eternity looked pretty comic accurate, like when they actually show them to us.
Yeah,
I've never seen Eternity.
Google it. Google them.
So whenever I saw like half of it was like just like a plain face and then half in shadows, it just reminded me of Psycho Pirate's Mask, and I was just like,
no, I
see where you got it.
Yeah, definitely. But what did you think of? I was wondering where he was going with this when he says, "All right, you do." When he arrives and all the kids are there, say, "All right, grab a weapon and do this." All right, we're all gonna be warriors at this point. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's not leading them to slaughter." But when he said, "All right, I'm gonna temporarily go Shazam on you and impart you,"
I was about to say Shazam did it first, but you're talking about the best part of the movie. This was amazing.
It was a lot of fun. It was kind of fun.
Whoever holds these weapons and believes in getting home and is pure of heart and for a limited time shall possess the power of Thor. I'm not going to lie to you. I actually got like goosebumps at that part. Like it was really freaking awesome. And I loved that whole scene with the kids. And it's worth noting he was using Zeus's thunderbolt. All of them had the yellow lightning of Zeus, not the blue lightning of Thor. So, yeah, the power of Thor, but there's some Zeus mixed in there with them. I thought it was absolutely an awesome, awesome scene. I have no idea what other people were going to think about it, but I freaking loved it.
But again, this is the growth of Thor in the sense of like, he realized, even though he was originally going in there to take down Gore, every time he tries to think he can do it on his own, he can't. He has to have help. He has to trust in other people to give him that help at that point.
Hey, they needed an army. They were looking for an army of gods. And, with the exception of a couple of them, they're all Asgardian kids.
This is also something I feel like is a story that...
Nice one, David. I'm here. David says, "I'm here for the murderous Tinkerbell child who is having way too much fun." Oh, those are the best ones.
It was so good.
Wow,
the girl with the bunny, the stuffed bunny.
Yes.
As well.
Yes.
Oh my god.
This scene sold the show for me, to be 100% honest. I was having, I was in and out of the entire film because of the Taika isms. This is again Thor having that heart. And in like empowering them with the God of Thunder was like, yeah, this is amazing. This is absolutely awesome. I love how I feel like we will probably see Axel again, whether he be a part of the Young Avengers or whatever.
I hope so, because he was awesome.
He was great. I feel like he was a really good part of this movie. But yeah, I think this was the best part of the movie, to be honest.
I love how Axel caught Stormbreaker, and he's like, "All right, go home," and he sends him Stormbreaker, and they get the kids out. They achieve their objective. They save the kids. They don't try to stay in fights. Like the whole reason Thor gave them power for a limited time only was to get them out. I love that.
Exactly. And we know, like you said, we knew Jane was not just from trailers. Forget the trailers at that point. We knew Jane was going to come back into it, take that one last time to as Gore is getting ready to basically kill Thor. That's when we get the hammer coming in and Jane arrives. And I thought it was very cool in the sense of the battle they had, and it was kind of a previewed with the fight in New Asgard and then a Shadow Realm, but like this kind of working in a teamwork together. I mean, this just screams Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, all these different combo moves they can do with each other. But I really did think was really cool was how when they shattered the Necro Sword, and as it was trying to reform at that point, Jane did the cool move with Mjolnir and grabbed all the parts of it and ended up destroying the Necro Sword through that method.
Yeah,
I genuinely thought the Necro Sword, even with it being broken, was going to like kill Jane.
I thought it was going to corrupt Mjolnir.
Yeah, that was also a theory. Yeah,
I was worried it was going to do that. I was thankful when it didn't.
But so, Gore's wounded, but he's able to go through the gates at that point. And then we see, as Brent and I were saying, like this, how eternity looks in this part. is really basically comic accurate. Yeah, he is the embodiment, or it is the embodiment of one of the most powerful cosmic gods in the Marvel universe. He or she or it can control time, space, and reality. As I said, his sister is named Infinity, has about the same stuff. Now in the comics, Eternity doesn't necessarily grant wishes. It's in the wheelhouse, but Eternity usually shows up when the universe is in great danger. And like I said earlier, the Living Tribunal is basically Eternity's boss. So we're getting more and more of these cosmic beings that are having. My prediction is these will be coming back. We will see the Living Tribunal. We are leading towards a multiversal war, and I guarantee you, these beings are going to be a part of that.
Yeah, they have to be, and they were like, it looked like they were like celestials or something, like imagery or something like that going along both there and in Omnipotent City. I thought I saw.
There were two celestials right there.
They were actually. They were.
Yeah,
okay.
they were there. As they are speeding out, you see two celestials kind of peer their heads in.
You're right. Okay, thank you. So
yeah, the statue head of the one celestial almost crushes the kids that Thor catches. Because he didn't skip leg day.
Yeah. unlike those photos tend to make us believe. But what did you all think of in the sense of like Gor's his whole thing was telling Eternity, "Oh, I'm gonna get rid of all gods." Thor then convincing Gore, when it comes down to it, you don't want to kill all the gods. You want your daughter back.
What really confused me was Thor and Jane being brought into there as well. Like it was almost as soon as Gore went in, it just changed the whole room. I feel like, and I know why they did it because of plot reasons, but I feel like it should have just been Gore with Eternity. Now, if that was obviously were to happen, then Thor could not convince Gore to do this.
I think it was more like a wide portal that, like, once somebody goes in, it's like almost like a Bifrost where it like just sucks everything else.
If it's like that, that makes sense.
That's how I took it, but I didn't think about it much.
Yeah, and that's fair. As for getting his daughter back, I mean, I was because this at this point Thor turns his back on Gore, and Gore like tells him off, saying, "Don't turn your back on me. Like I could kill you in the sense." And he's like, "Yeah, you've already won. Like, let me be with the woman I love. Let me spend my last minutes with them." We get the whole love thing, and I was unaware until literally the end that Gore's daughter's name was Love.
I think that's the point.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was exactly the point, and it went over my head. Obviously, throughout the entire movie,
and in the comics, the kids are there. He loses kids, in his backstory. He has a son and things like that did come up, but they're not this much of a focus. They're the last. I think one of his sons, who ends up making it through, it is kind of a focus, but it's not like I have to. Like they're doing it for the kid,
Yeah. And as far as my thoughts on the whole idea of this, it is very much like a, hey, instead of it's almost in the exact opposite of like Thanos, the argument of why kill everybody when you could, just make extra resources. And it's the same thing here. It's like, why kill everybody when you could just bring back your loved ones? And Gore says, like, why? Like, you guys know that the Necrosword was killing me. She would be alone. I don't know if I 100% like the idea of like, oh, she won't be alone because we're just gonna take her in. Thor is gonna watch over your child. And like, if I'm Thor and Jane just says that, I'm like, why are you volunteering me? Like, I never asked for this kind of thing.
I mean, they foreshadowed it earlier. Korg flat out says, "Oh, I think Thor would have been a good dad." I mean,
I think Thor even felt like it was a kid.
He definitely there were hints of it in like the montage with their relationship.
So David does bring up a good point. He says, "Here's my biggest issue: Thor is a god. Gore doesn't trust or like gods, yet he trusts the guy that he's been fighting to take his daughter. I think it's more so he knows he's dying, but he loves his daughter so much. Like, yes, it would have been a big, middle finger to the entire universe if he just, last minute said, if I'm dead, maybe I'll see my wife and child in the afterlife anyway. So, let's just kill all the gods. But that's just not how the story goes.
I actually thought he was going to wish Jane to be better, but that's just me being naive, I guess.
It's one of those things that he sees Thor is fighting against Gore for his own life, not saying, at no point does, I don't know if Thor understands exactly the full reasoning behind Gore's actions at that point, but sees that if he's willing to care for this technically this mortal woman at that point and show him that not all gods are selfish beings and things like that, then maybe it's probably it's either I bring back my daughter and she lives, or I do go through with it. Like, he sees the idea of love winning out in the end.
I mean, and that's kind of the point. It's worth noting that Gore did not have like a personal vendetta against Thor. Thor just happened to be the god with Stormbreaker. He would have gone hard after anybody who had Stormbreaker. And so when he's at this point, he's never considered the possibility that his daughter could come back to life and could have a family. And that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to make sure his daughter isn't alone. He wasn't going to do that because he didn't think that was possible. He finds out that, wait, if I bring her back, she can live, she can be safe, she can have a family. Okay, then, like, I'm gonna do it. And so, and even at this point, like, yeah, he has seen Thor the way Thor is with others. Thor trying to protect others. He obviously loves the mortal woman. He has his friends that he saved. He saved all these kids. He's risked his life multiple times trying to rescue other children that are not his. Like, I kind of feel like Thor proved himself a worthy guardian in this case for it. Now, is Thor going to just take it upon himself to agree? Well, if he thinks that's what it takes to save all the other gods, including the Asgardians, yeah, he would.
And it's mirroring what Odin did with Loki.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right.
And so that's the old adage: the son becomes the father becomes the son. At that point, he's learned. He's never agreed with everything his father does, but he loved his father, and he saw what good he did in taking in Loki, even though there were certain original, not necessarily the best ways of why he did it, but says that maybe I can be better. I can take the good of what my father did and raise this child in honoring Gore's wishes to just have her have a better life, and he can be better than his father was to him at times.
Yeah.
So, but Jane, like we said, Jane passing away, we never find out what the catchphrase that she wanted to do, which I thought eventually we were going to find out.
Yeah, jerks. I thought for sure we'd hear it before the movie was over.
I was a little upset that they didn't, but I do think, spoilers for our conversation in the future, I do think that we will hear that catchphrase in the future.
Yeah, it's hanging out there at that point. So
nope, movie failed. Plot hole.
All right, already failed. Yep. And so she dies. We get the Flash. In the sense of the children return to New Asgard. We get a lovely statue of the mighty Thor. Valkyrie and Siff are training all of them.
Yes.
Korg finds love with Dwayne the Rock.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Had not caught that.
You didn't catch that? Oh my god!
You didn't catch that the two times that you watched?
No, I caught the Dwayne part. I just didn't get Dwayne the Rock.
I didn't even catch the Dwayne part. So that's when you put it in the show notes. I'm like, who the hell is Dwayne?
As soon as I saw the mustache, I was like, oh, that's his father's mustache.
That's
like
fantastic.
Dwayne the Rock Johnson's father.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
That was good.
It was hilarious.
Is Dwayne Johnson's father known for having a mustache?
Yes, he does.
I will look it up. I have no idea what he looks like.
Yeah. But we get Lady Siff again. This time she has a very familiar looking aesthetic to her arm now.
Yeah.
If you guys remember,
Misty Knight.
no. Well,
Oh.
yes, but also in Shang-Chi, I forgot his name.
Oh yeah.
The Razor Fist.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Razor Fist.
Yeah, he has the same kind of. He's an amputee,
Arm.
and he has that,
Yeah.
that part on his arm also. So we could possibly see Lady Sif in the future with like a sword as an arm. That'll be very, very interesting to see.
Yep. Yeah.
David, I looked it up. Google Solomon Rocky Johnson, and I was like, wait, his name's Rocky. I looked up Dwayne Johnson's dad and went to Google Images, and I just totally missed that.
seeing Sif training Axel in particular, like giving like more time with him. We're gonna see Axel in the future. He's gonna come back, and it's gonna be awesome.
Oh, Chris, you are muted.
Thank you. Seeing Love actually having powers brought me, and I put this in the notes, it's saying, being that she was resurrected by Eternity, Eternity has its own kind of power set it does bestow, the Captain Universe power set. And so these were not her. Gore did not have powers. This was so part of Eternity's powers are now in Love. So is this the MCU's version, quote unquote, we'll call it version of Captain Universe?
What does Captain Universe call its power? Like uni power or something?
Yeah,
like
uni
that?
power. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
dig
we didn't get a full look at it, but she's got abilities beyond
Young
wielding
Avengers.
Stormbreaker.
Put her in.
I do know this character, but I'm pretty sure there is an Eternity girl in Marvel Comics.
Yeah.
So not sure if they will give her that title, but I mean this could be the MCU's Eternity girl.
Yeah, that also works. So it was just one of those things like, Gore's daughter not having powers at that point until she's resurrected. That's an interesting kind of dynamic, but it was a cool way to end. Finally, the reason for the title Love and Thunder at that point, them jumping into action. Cool way to end at that point. But
yeah.
All right, so
Taika does love that shot of Thor or whoever jumping with the lightning around, getting ready to.
Yeah.
There's like one of them in Ragnarok, and it's amazing. And they did it like 3 times, I think, in this one. But I'm a sucker for it, so whatever.
It's good. So all right, let's talk about some mid-credit and post-credits. So Brent, I'm you and I are big, huge fans of Ted Lasso. For those listeners of this show, how much did this make you happy to see who Zeus was talking to?
So I actually inadvertently spoiled myself on this. I can't blame anyone. It's ultimately my fault. So I still did not know if it was true because the source that I saw it from, big grain of salt, right? Like I had no idea if it was true or where this came from. But when I saw Zeus, I'm like, oh, he's here. He's there. I was like, oh my gosh, they're doing it.
He's here. He's there. He's where?
He's every fucking where. Roy Kent.
Yes, the Hercules. So Thor, Zeus is alive. We thought he was dead, and he's talking about how the people of the universe used to worship gods, and now they worship superheroes, which offends him, and he wants the universe and the people to fear gods again. And so he is sending his son Hercules to kill Thor, and it is Hercules. We get a very quick scene. And as much comic accuracy as you can get with Hercules from Marvel Comics. But yes, Roy effing Kent, Brett Goldstein is our MCU's Hercules. So
he loves the F word, by the way.
Oh yeah, he definitely does.
I was just gonna say, the movie ended, credits started to roll, and I knew that I knew that Joe was gonna be the first one who had seen the movie. So right before my movie started, I texted Joe and I said, tell me how many credit scenes there's going to be when you're out.
Yep.
And as
Why
soon as
do
the
people ask this question anymore?
well, no, because I need to know
Because
if there's going to
Guardians
be
2
more
had
than
4.
All you need to know is you always stay to the very end of the credits, and you will catch them. Because there was a guy who sat next to us who said he had bought a $500 issue of Black Panther recently, but he asked me if there was going to be a second credit scene. He was geeking out over Hercules, geeking out over Eternity. I'm like, you're this deep in Marvel lore, and you don't just automatically assume there is going to be something at the very end of the credits.
There were two
One
people
issue
who
of
got up
Black
after the
Panther
first
was
credit
$500.
scene.
It was the first appearance of
I
something.
had a couple
don't know.
people get up
Okay.
after. Like, this is the 35th project. I think like the 30th, 29th or 30th like MCU movie, and people will still get up after the first credit scene.
I needed to pee, so I need to know how long I
No,
need.
Yeah, but you could go-
unacceptable, Clay. Unacceptable.
But
This is
when
under 2 hours. You could have held
when-
it.
when I looked at the text, he said 2 credit scenes. I was like, okay. And I said, I haven't seen them yet. The credits are still rolling, but I'm going to go ahead and make my guesses. First guess is I'm sure they're going to tease Hercules, and 2, I'm sure they're going to tease Valkyrie. And
I wrote back, let's see what happens.
as soon as I send it, he says, let's see what happens. And as soon as his text came in, I saw Zeus, and I was pissed. I was pissed because all this talk about Zeus being dead, and there he is alive. There's like all these gods dying in the movie, and then Zeus is actually able to live. I was
I
a
mean,
little
he just
upset.
had a hole in his chest. It's not that big a deal.
I was a little.
It's a flesh wound.
I was still a little
him,
upset
yeah.
by it.
I mean,
But-
heck, people survive holes in chests in Star Wars all the time, you know? Revenge will keep you alive, Clay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, except if you're literally cut in half. But even then, if you're
Nope,
cut in
you can
half,
survive
we
that. No
can get
problem.
robot legs out of you. Robot legs will happen.
Yes.
Um,
But when I realized Zeus was actually talking to somebody, I was like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna happen. I'm getting Hercules here." And when I saw fucking Roy Kent,
Yes.
I texted Joe saying, "Fuck yeah," and I sent a GIF of Roy Kent, and Joe was like, "The second reveal shouldn't have happened," and I was like, "No, it's Roy Kent." Like, do you
Yeah,
not
I'm like, I have
understand
know who this
And
is.
Joe's like, I have no idea who.
I
That
don't have Apple TV Plus. I have no idea. I don't watch,
Oh, my God.
what you call it, that show, Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso.
It is.
sorry.
It's an interesting thing because we did get at the end like Thor will return. I don't think any of us were doubting that at that point. But my question I've read in the notes is that is Thor 5 going to be the War of the Gods? And Brent and I offline, one of our listeners and patrons, Jim had asked, saying, is there any kind of comics, event or something where the gods war on the Marvel heroes at that point? And there are a number of them. Recently, you have Fear itself and Siege. But the question is, the movie, if this Thor 5 is going to be a War of the Gods at that point, none of them are really gods. I wrote this to Amara Daniels early on. None of them are gods because they're just aliens or magic beings that are immortal who are accepted to be gods by others. And now these beings believe the lie that they should be worshipped. So they're ticked, obviously, about this.
Yeah. But as far as that question goes, for me, reading Mighty Thor for the first time this week, I didn't know this, that the War of the Realm started way back in 2015 when the real payoff came out, just recently in 18 and 19? 2018, 2019? With that
Called
giant
Robot
omnibus that I know that Chris has. I'm kind of expecting maybe a mini event like that probably in the future.
It very much could be. I mean, again, they didn't make any illusions. This movie has nothing but Jason Aaron's whole run all over it. At that point, he's even said that. I mean, it's probably one of
and
the
it's very convenient that we're getting Daredevil back. And
He was listed as a consultant in the
he was.
in the credits.
Yeah.
Yep. And but so then we get our post-credit scene with Jane arriving at the gates of Valhalla, where Heimdall welcomes her, and I think when the question is, is she really dead? Is she coming back? She's coming back, and I kind of said this as one of our recent fact or fictions is it. spoiler alert for the comics at that point. This happened in the comics. Jane does die, but Odin calls her spirit back, and she does become a Valkyrie, as she is kind of right now is a Valkyrie.
And
I did not anticipate that for the second teaser. I actually thought they were going to go outside of Thor for the next teaser. And I was telling my dad in the credits how Jane in the comics becomes Valkyrie. And then it cuts and she appears. I'm like, oh, well, I guess we are doing that.
And I kind of thought the same way you did, Brent, because usually, in the MCU fashion, there is something in continuity of the character and then something that progresses the overall MCU.
Often, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I assumed was going to happen with, Guardians of Galaxy being, next April, May, sometime in the spring of next year, I believe.
It's in May.
Yeah. And
so I assumed that was going to happen.
May 5th,
But
301 days.
I forget you always have your countdowns for each movie.
he
but-
does.
Correct me if I'm wrong, all three of you, because I'm sure you've read past this moment in Thor, Mighty Thor's life in continuity. Valkyrie is still worthy of Mjolnir, is she not? She has wielded Mjolnir as Valkyrie.
Yes, she has.
Yeah. So when it says Thor will return, it could really be either or.
Correct.
I was kind of hoping it would say Mighty Thor will return.
Same.
But I love, by the way, when just to go back real quick, when Gore called her Lady Thor, she's like, no, it's Mighty Thor.
Yep.
Or Dr.
Dr.
Jane.
Jane.
Dr. Jane Foster, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good way to end at that point because a lot of complaints in the sense of like there's a lot of death in this movie, but some of the deaths and a number of key deaths weren't really dead. And
Also-
they're
I mean, there really weren't that many deaths in this
What?
movie.
off screen.
I mean, everything was off screen from characters we've never met before.
Well, I was gonna say she died post battle, so how'd she get to Valhalla?
That's a question for David. I don't know.
So
I will say the lack of and I understand Thor has already been through a lot. Do you really need him to again see all of his friends and loved ones massacred? No, but the only one that really ticked me off was the fact that Korg didn't really die, because I felt that was really strong of like an emotion for Thor to then kill quote unquote Zeus.
Gosh, I'd have been so pissed if they had killed Korg.
And then all of a sudden Korg is just like, hey, I'm over
this
here.
face.
It
guys,
was a goofy way to do it, and yeah, I kind of thought they might do a Groot type thing where he's only partially back at the end. No, he was fully formed again. I don't care. I love Korg. Korg is a delight. He needs to be there.
well, it kind of leads me to the next question I ask, and we'll just feel free to jump in. Like, where do we see Thor, Jane, King Valkyrie, Korg, Love? When do we see them again? How do we see them again?
God, I don't know.
I don't know.
Can we write it down? Let's revisit that question.
Yeah.
After San Diego Comic Con.
Okay.
Because like right now, I genuinely like with what's announced and what we know is coming. I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
It's very
5.
hard for even me to say like what upcoming project could they possibly fit in. So you may be right. After D23 SDCC, we might have a better idea. But right now, I can't. Outside of what we all are thinking, Secret Wars. Okay, that's the low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
but when before that?
Thor 5. Is he going to be the first character to get to the 5th one?
I've always thought about this, and Disney Plus is the Disney Plus is the place for these things to happen, and I'm sure all of y'all have said it before. But just like how miniseries and comics go, it progresses a character, not necessarily a story. And I do genuinely think Valkyrie needs one to progress her character a little bit more, because she hasn't had a whole lot of development in the projects that she's been. Like, she is great in the projects that she's been in, but I do want more of her character being at the center. As far as Love, I I think it may be a little overpowering for her to be in a Young Avengers project, especially if I already want Axel there as well.
I don't know if we're getting a Kid Kang or Kid Loki. Those are pretty two overpowered individuals there.
Sorry, I was reading David's response.
Yeah, that's a good one. Valkyrie Finds Love, the Disney Plus Valentine's Day special. Yeah,
Do it. We're getting like presumably the Halloween type one with Werewolf by Midnight.
yeah.
do
Why
the
not?
Valentine's
Let's
special.
make it a theme. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's hard right now. What little we do know outside of some low hanging fruit projects, I think it's kind of a wait and see, kind of see where they do end up next. Outside,
I think
of
it'll be in Echo. Probably. Not.
Okay. Everyone else has shown up in Echo.
Let's just be a picture of them.
So, all right. Well, let's go as we do these reviews as we do. Let's go around the horn and say what's your rating out of 10, and if you know where it ranks in your overall MCU list. So I'll start with Joe.
All right, so I had to redo my whole list. This was the last time I was on. I didn't have the shows in there. So I added those in there finally. And for my ranking, or for my out of 10, I give it about a 6.5, give or take. Like, it wasn't the best movie out there. And I still had fun with it, but there was just too many jokes that overpowered the seriousness for me. And take out some of those jokes, it'll go higher. But still an enjoyable movie. So 6.5 at the moment. I've also only seen it one time. I need to get a couple more viewings, so my ranking is tentative at this moment. However, I have it currently at number 22 out of 35 projects. It's behind... Thor Ragnarok is above it at 18. I like Thor Ragnarok better than I like this one.
Fair. Okay. Clay.
So I give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. This was very surprising for me. I went into this movie with expectations that I was not going to like it, but I did not turn my brain off in order to watch this.
Oh, you got to learn how to do that, man.
I did see a nice meme from The Office saying Thor: Love and Thunder. Yeah, Thor: Love and Thunder, a movie you can actually like and have fun with. You can turn off your brain and not think the world is going to end.
I just can't do that when it comes to movies. I was still analyzing this movie. There was things that, of course, I don't think I will ever like as far as Taika isms and MCU isms, but I understand why they are there. And because of that, I was actually able to enjoy this movie a lot more than I thought it was. I was able to. So I give it a 7.5 out of 10, and it places number 21 on my list, whereas Thor Ragnarok is last on my list. So
Okay.
just so everybody knows where that is. So number
It's all right.
20,
We have other members of our network that have more absurd ratings, so I'll let Clay have this one.
number 20 is the first Thor, and number 22 is Spider-Man Far From Home.
Oh, was I supposed to give my two around it? Because I didn't.
You can if you want. Not a big deal.
Moon Knight at 21 and Guardians 2 at 23.
Brett, what you got?
Overall, I was happy with this movie. Is it cracking my top 10 or whatever? And as you're about to find out, no, it's not. Like, I don't think this is the top tier of what the MCU has done. I also don't think it's anywhere near the bottom. I've got it in the middle. I don't know. 7.5 sounds pretty good. I don't usually think about the number ratings too much. So sure, I'll follow Clay there with 7.5. But where I have it ranked is a little higher. I ended up putting it right behind Thor Ragnarok at number 17. It's right in front of Spider-Man: Homecoming. And honestly, I feel like this is the kind of like it with Ragnarok. Right now, I give the edge to Ragnarok, but I could see myself in the future on revisiting this and ending up flipping those. Regardless, I hope Taika Waititi does another Thor movie. I love that pairing. So that ultimately, I want another one. Call me greedy.
That's all right. You can be greedy as a fan. Fans are greedy. Fans want certain things that'll never happen.
This one might though. I have a chance.
Jab, jab.
Yep. So the where I'm at, I'll go for go and agree for 3 with 7.5. That's kind of where and it's gone up from when I left the movie. I thought more about it, listened to some other reviews, thought in different ways, so it's definitely gone up. And where I'm at right now is a 7.5. Just like Joe, I've only seen it once. Probably won't see it again until it lands on Disney Plus. It's just how most of the time I work with seeing movies a second time. Where it ranks for me as I pull it up on my letterbox, this is where I currently have it. Scrolling down, it is currently number 24 in my rankings. Black Widow is ahead of it, and Captain Marvel is right behind it. Thor Ragnarok is 20 for me. Ragnarok, still, I have so many moments of that movie that I still laugh out loud.
Get help.
Get help is something that I joke around with Aaron about because that's her favorite scene as well. Jeff Goldblum is just a national treasure, and I love his Grandmaster. I especially love the when rough with Bruce being in his ship and doing Happy Birthday. That's that'll always get it. But yes, right now it's comfortably at 24, and right now I don't think it's going to move too much up or down from that right now. So.
But even so, it looks like all of our rankings on our letterbox are actually kind of pretty close.
We basically all agree it's in the middle of the MCU.
Yeah.
I even after the first viewing, I was telling Emily, I'm like, it's somewhere between 16 and 25. It can bounce around any point at that time.
Yeah, and we have 35 completed projects. Wait till Wednesday, we'll have 36 completed projects in the MCU.
Yep, exactly. So, all right, well. This was again, we kind of say it's divisive. I think for the most part, all of us, in our the divisive issues, I think we all have similar qualms or some things that we can kind of see everyone's side on. But yeah, another great MCU review. So our next movie for the MCU is not coming until, I believe, Black Panther Wakanda Forever is November, correct?
It is in November, 126 days, November 11th, 2022.
So we do have a long stint of no MCU movie until then. However, we do have a number of MCU Disney Plus shows that are still on the horizon, with She-Hulk in August and a still yet to be announced date for What If Season 2 this year, along with the Halloween specials. So we do, and I Am Groot,
and the Baby Groot. Yeah,
Baby Groot.
And
so
I Am Groot. There are 6 in 2023. There are 6 Marvel movies, counting the Sony ones.
Yep.
So there's a lot next year too.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you, Joe and Clay, for joining us for this review. And as we head towards the end, why don't you tell people how they can follow you and plug your shows?
Yeah, I'll go first. Of course, you can always find me at FanboyClay on Twitter. Go into the bio there. You can find the link tree to the links to all the shows that I host, that including, of course, DC Alliance, Batman News Weekly, Ranger Alliance, and, of course, Star Wars Alliance.
Yeah, thank you guys again for having us on. This was awesome. Always a good time. You guys can find me on Twitter underscore. You can find my show, Walk Through the Multiverse, on Twitter at WalkTheVerse. And you can find my other show, Comic Book Rundown, on Twitter at Comic Rundown.
All right, Brent, toss it to you.
Brentak Prime on Twitter, Brentak Prime on TikTok. That's where I'm at, so come hang out.
Yes, and you can find me on Twitter at Chris Balligan. Find my other show, World's Finest True Believers, at Finest Believers. Again, want to thank our sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. Use that code MarvelGUA at checkout for $2 off every single order. You can follow this show on Twitter at Marvel A Podcast. You can email the show at MarvelAlliancePodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUA Pod Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide feedback, fact or fictions, questions. Now that the review is out, people have seen it. If you want to avoid, if your question has some spoilers, just DM it to Brent and I. Brent will put out the question. But if you're worried about spoiling some key aspects, our DMs are open. The show DM is open. So if you want to try to not spoil some for someone, just DM it to us. We'll put it in the questions for next week. Continue to rate and review the Marvel Line solo feed, GUA feed on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever platform of choice may be. Thank you all for joining us in the live feed. Thank you all for listening. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. even though we've talked for almost going on over 2 hours, at that point we always have to post credits. We're not gonna have two. We we're not like exactly like that, but we have come to kind of the halfway point of 2022 in the MCU at that point. So, gonna want to do a check-in for what you all think of what your thoughts of have the MCU put out this year, Disney Plus, and in the movies, high points, low points, and hopes for what's coming in the rest of the year slate. So feel free anyone to jump in on that.
I've enjoyed everything they put out. Honestly, I've enjoyed everything they put out from the beginning. My only hiccup that I've had was Eternals. That's the
That
one.
was last year.
Was that last year?
We're talking this. Yeah, that was last year.
Oh fuck. Okay, sorry, my bad. Okay, so yeah, no, everything's high point. Like everything they put out has been great. The shows have been wonderful. Like Miss Marvel is about ready to end, and I am excited for that show. There was a show that I wasn't like. I'm not gonna say gung ho to watch the minute it drops, but I've enjoyed it because it's not for me, and I'm fine with it being aimed not for me. It's just been a fun show that I can just enjoy. I don't need to have any sort of super knowledge on it, and they've everything that they've given to us for it has just been great. That being said, Moon Knight was good. I enjoyed that one. What were a couple of the other ones?
Moon Knight, Strange, Miss Marvel, Thor, in that order. Well, Miss Marvel, I guess, is technically after Thor.
There you go. And then Doctor Strange was wonderful as well. I mean, it didn't. There were some things I didn't like about it, but at the same time, I'm not gonna like everything. They're gonna have some stuff in there that I question, but still, everything they've put out this year, wonderful. As for what's coming up next, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it because we got She-Hulk, we've got Black Panther, is Echo this year or is that next year?
Next year.
Okay.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so I'm down.
Okay.
As far as the MCU for this year, I have been enjoying everything that is there. I saw this tweet while we were just talking about Thor: Love and Thunder. It says, after years of critics slamming the Marvel formula and filmmaking template, it deployed one time after the next. It's weird to see the Phase 4 movies, the ones that clearly break the formula and the mold, are so divisive. And I think that is true, but I absolutely like it. I love it. Because I was at one point one of those people that was like, this is too formulaic. And I wouldn't say that I was one of those people that are saying that every Marvel movie was the same, but it was very much formulaic. And with freaking Multiverse of Madness, I feel like that destroyed the mold and brought a whole new spin on what is, Raimi's vision and style. And I absolutely loved it. I am very much enjoying Miss Marvel every single week. I'm really looking forward to the finale. And Moon Knight, I enjoyed parts of it. Some things I wasn't completely on board with, but I think I will be more so on board with Moon Knight, the character, in whatever projects he's going to be in next. And I believe Black Panther is the last project of this year, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I won't say that I'm worried for that film, but I feel like it is going to be an interesting one. With how things have been with the filming, the way people are already kind of thinking about how that movie is going to play out. One thing I will say is that I am loving the aesthetic for Namor and the Atlanteans. So looking forward to that for sure.
Brent, what's your feelings on this year?
Honestly, I think it's been so far a strong year. Not the best year Marvel has ever put out. For example, like I cannot fathom that this year will, at the end of this year, at the end of 2022, that I will say, oh, it was better than what they put out in 2021, right? Like I cannot fathom, but it's arguable that 2021 was, I think you could argue that was Marvel's greatest year ever. Like I know, yeah, someone's thinking, but Eternals came out that year. Yeah, sure, it did, but so did Shang-Chi and Loki and WandaVision and No Way Home and several others. Like, it's not the best year they've ever had, but I've really enjoyed it. Like, I've liked all of them. I have a little bit of rushing concerns related to Miss Marvel, but you know what? I had those same concerns with Moon Knight, and I think they stuck it. So we'll see what they do with Miss Marvel. You know, I'll give final judgments in just a few days. But both movies have been fun. They have been different overall from what people try to claim is the overall Marvel formula, because you know Marvel's only made the same movie 23 different times, and I love how the people then get mad when those movies do exactly what they want and do something different. And Taika Waititi's movie is a Taika Waititi movie. Sam Raimi's is a Sam Raimi movie, you know. And then Moon Knight felt like nothing, like totally different. Miss Marvel, they bring it right back. Really, if I have anything I would really complain about is, as much fun as it is for me to have a TV show and a movie in the same week, why are we not spreading them out on the calendar a bit more? Like, why do you ever need to double up? Like, same thing on Disney Plus in general with Marvel and Star Wars. It's fun, but I don't know why I don't understand from a business aspect why they don't spread these things out more and cover more of the calendar. So it's like, yeah, like maybe Thor Love and Thunder should not have come out until Ms. Marvel was done. You know, maybe. Just spread it out a bit, but whatever. I'm still there for it always.
Yeah, with the shows on Disney Plus, when I saw what the slate was going to be and the surprise of what we didn't know was going to be what if season 2 was actually going to be part of the slate, that was more of a last minute kind of, it's coming with that. This seemed to be the Disney Plus in comparison to their first season with WandaVision, Loki, what am I forgetting?
Falcon and Winter Soldier,
Loki, and
Widow,
Hawkeye.
What if?
Yeah, Hawkeye. Those 4 right there, the live action, those were basically, we were familiar with all those characters in some way, shape, or form. So this was the year of experimentation. I put experimentation in quotes of characters we were not familiar with, being that Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, upcoming with She-Hulk at that point. So three
Werewolf by Midnight, you know.
Yeah, Werewolf by Midnight will be the 4th with a special at that point. So this was going to be like, okay, not these projects are not going to probably land as hard in the sense of as popular at that point. I applaud them for taking a show like Moon Knight, and though it was a complaint of mine and others, just because I wanted to see more of Moon Knight in costume, it was a very interesting character study about what is someone going with DID at that point. And looking at Miss Marvel with representation, Brent and I have said it over and over again of how much we are impressed that Disney is not trying to shy away from it and trying to bring forward as much of Pakistani and Muslim culture into this show as possible without looking like they're pandering. So my low points in the sense of, like, kind of similar to Brent, the 6-episode formula is, I think, it many times hurting them at that point. I'm of the proponent saying, if it needs one extra show, give them an extra episode. But again, I'm not the bean counters or something like that. What I'm looking forward to is, I said it in my prediction, is how impressed I've been with Miss Marvel. I really think She-Hulk's going to surprise some people. I really, really think that it's still going to be my surprise hit that people don't see coming, and actually say, man, you thought Miss Marvel was delightful? This is going to surprise a lot of people. Despite all the CG complaints, things like that, I think it's still going to surprise people. I'll die in the hill. I'm a Tatiana Maslany super fan, but, you know, that's the one I'm looking forward to besides What If on there. Wakanda Forever, that's just like we said, it's going to be very interesting. A lot of feelings, a lot of emotions going into that movie, but that next to Doctor Strange was going to be, those two were going to be my I'm looking forward to the most. So there's still a lot to look forward to. It's going to be a fun thing to see how it all shakes out. Next year, I think we're going back to what last year was going to be. I think we're going to see a lot more familiar Disney Plus properties with probably a mixer of a little bit less of the newbies. But I think they're going to be a balance next year with half and half. So, but all right. Well, let y'all what you think. We will see you back after 2 weeks. We are back at our normal time, Thursday night, 9:10 Eastern Standard Time, back with our finale review of Miss Marvel. And a lot of news that dropped today. In the last 2 days, we got a lot of news to go over. So we will catch you all then. Stay safe out there. See you later.